Hello, everybody, and welcome to the pilot episode of the original Mets Guys podcast. My name is Azriel, and I'm here with my father. We are going to be talking about Mets free agency. We're going to have a recap of the
I don't think we're going to do
2024
that in this
season.
episode. I think that's
No, we're not. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but that's okay. You know what? I like it. Whatever comes to my head is going to come out of my mouth. But anyways, that brings us to the point. We're going to be talking Mets. We're going to be talking baseball. We're going to be talking sports in general. We're here to have a good time. We want to hear what you guys have to say. So please leave us a follow, drop a comment, do whatever you got to do. Make yourselves be heard. So I want to ask you, at what moment in time made you fall in love with the New York
well.
Mets?
Before we get there, right? Could we just take a minute and acknowledge that this is a very interesting duo to do a podcast together, right? Well,
There's nothing like a
right.
father and
So
son podcast.
first of all, I think of all the podcasts that are out there, this is unique, right? Why?
No,
Why
that's
listen
that's
to us?
I don't know. I don't know any
Right.
other
Why
father
listen
and
to
son
us? Because
podcast.
you'll hear a lot of the bickering that goes on in our house as we talk about sports, as we talk about the Mets, as we talk about other New York, the other New York sports teams, the Giants, the Knicks. Um, not going to really talk about hockey.
And
Yeah, I
the
don't know
other
what
team
hockey
across
is.
town.
So you're not going to hear a lot about hockey over here. But you'll hear a lot of the bickering that goes on in our house. You'll hear it over here. We figured, why deprive the world of our bickering? Let's just share it all over here. So that's a really cool thing
It,
that we're
it, it really isn't fair for everybody else who doesn't know what
doing. Right.
happens in our
Uh,
household.
Do you want to tell them,
Um,
first of all, do you want to tell them about the time that, so we don't live in New York right now. I grew up in New York. Azriel was born in New York, but then we moved, and we live right now in Chicago. And at some point, Azriel, when he was little, came home and asked if he could go for the Chicago White Sox. Do you want
and this is, by the way, guys, this is why I'm a Mets fan. When you hear what my father said to me, you'll understand
So why
why
don't you
I'm a
why
Mets
don't, why
fan.
don't you tell him? Why don't you
Now,
tell him what I
right? Okay, so what happened? I came home from school one day, right? No, but obviously we're living in Chicago. Nobody's a Mets fan here. I mean, there are, but
They're all New Yorkers.
right, whatever. I come home. I go to my dad. I said, "Dad, can I be a White Sox fan?" He goes, "You want to sleep outside tonight?" And I did cry. I was very disappointed, but I am.
I
What
don't
did
know
you
what
do?
just happened. Edit this out 1 second. Hold that thought.
We are holding.
So start again. So you came home.
So yeah, I came home one day. Came home from school. I go to my dad and I said, "Hey, can I be a White Sox fan?" Now, most of other people, some people I know that we both know that live in Chicago, right? Their father's a Mets fan and their kids are Cubs fans, right? That is what we call weak. My father came to me and said, well, he didn't come to me. He responded to me and said, "Sure, if you want to live on the streets, if
Well,
you want to
technically,
sleep in the
really, I
backyard."
didn't say sure. I said absolutely not. And if you do, I'll kick you out of the house. Right. There was no
There's
sure. There's no
that
option.
is,
It's like you're going to be a Met fan, and if you want to go for the White Sox, then get out.
and then there is no room for
Right.
you here. No option to pay rent either. So now now that you guys know why I'm a Mets fan, why don't we ask you, at what moment in your childhood did you watch the Mets and go, "Damn, I love this team, and I will forever and ever and ever love this team, and I love this team so much that I'll threaten to kick my kid out of the house if he doesn't love this team."
So I was 6 years old in 1986 when the Mets won the World Series.
Do your math,
I
everybody.
can't say for sure that I remember any of the games. I want to believe I remember the Bill Buckner play, but I'll be honest, probably not. I do remember glimpses of Game 7. But what I really remember was my brother, who today uh, is not a Met fan, jumping up and down in the house, hitting the top of the doorways, celebrating that the Mets won. That was my first thing. I definitely remember the '88 season, and I remember watching um, Ron Darling start Game 7 against the Dodgers and fall apart. Ron, if we ever get you on this podcast, we got to talk about that. Um, and so that's really when I remember like full, becoming a Met fan was the '86 World Series championship. I remember for days after, all you heard in New York was the Queen song, "We Are the Champions." We are the champions, right? So that was playing all over New York at the time, and yeah, that was my I'm a Met fan moment. Well, let me ask you. So you obviously grew up a Met fan and had no option of going elsewhere.
Being otherwise.
So for you, as when you think about like the Mets growing up, what's the memory for you that stands out the most?
So for me, I mean, I think the most defining moment for me of really what it is to be a Met and be a Met fan is when Wilmer Flores started crying in the middle of a game. All the rumors going around, and I think when they talked about it, I think it was David Wright who went up to him and said something, or you're being traded, or that's what's going on. That's why everybody's cheering, or that's why you got the standing ovation. And then you see him go back out there wiping his tears, off his face, and everybody, we all growing up when we're playing baseball, everybody hears there's no crying in baseball, right? Unless you're Wilmer Flores and unless you're playing for the Mets. So I think that to me, that moment to me was the moment I knew what it's like to be a Met fan, and what it's like to be a part of such a phenomenal organization. Is that when you think, and when everybody thinks you're getting traded, right? You get the biggest standing ovation, and you guys. Wilmer Flores wasn't exactly Francisco Lindor, so I think that to me was the most was one of those moments that I
Right,
connect
right.
with the most.
So
I
I think
guess I
what
could
happened
say.
was is that he had an at bat, and everyone already was hearing, their phones were going off that he got traded, and he came back to the dugout and was like, "Well, that's weird. Why is everybody like cheering for me?" And then he found out, got emotional. He got sent back on. Terry Collins said, "I didn't get word that you can't get traded, that you were traded, and I have to pull you. So until that go out." And he was crying, and then he came in, and David Wright followed him into to console him and say, "Hey, right now we don't know anything." David Wright didn't tell him that he was traded, but David Wright consoled him. Yeah.
Got it. Got you.
Anyway, just
But yeah, so that is the moment for me, which is like this is what it is to be a Mets fan, and I mean, everybody go watch. Everybody watching this, I'm sure you know exactly what we're talking about. If you don't, look up Wilmer
there's
Flores
no way
crying,
if you're a Met fan listening to
taking the
this
field.
podcast, you don't know what we talking about.
And if you are a Mets fan and you don't know what we're talking about, then I don't know
Right.
where
Well, you
you've been
must
your
be very
entire
young.
life, or not a real Mets fan. You just
You said it,
like
not
blue and
me.
orange. So, anyways, like I said before, we'll be talking Mets. We'll be talking sports.
Are we talking Mets?
Um, we Yeah,
Okay.
we're gonna talk
Just want to
Mets.
make sure that it's clear that
I
that
mean,
the
that's
original Mets
that's
guy
the.
podcast will be talking Mets.
I mean, I hope for all the idiots watching that your guys aren't so that dumb to think that the original Mets guys podcast isn't going to talk Mets. I'm only repeating it because I'm one of those stupid guys to see a podcast that says original Mets guy podcast and be like, oh, I wonder what they're
Right.
talking about. Anyways, but we do have a couple things, a couple, I guess, podcast rules that we'll go over. One is that we will not be talking politics. We will not be talking current events. And probably the most important rule is that when we're referring to the other baseball team in New York, we will call them the other
Right.
baseball team in New
That is
York.
a word, a name that is banned in our house, and it's not going to be said on this podcast. We're very careful with the words that we use. and therefore the other New York baseball team will be referred to as such. The other New York baseball team. There's the Mets, and then there's the other New York baseball team. Um, it's also possible that that team in Philadelphia, um,
I don't even know what team we're
right,
talking
that
about.
baseball team in Philadelphia, it's possible with them their name will be said, but we will try hard to not say their name. But it's not as strong as our feelings aren't as strong
Right.
as
I
those
mean,
with the other New York baseball team.
you won't hear us say that the other baseball team in New
Right.
York's team name. It's just not going to happen. Um, moving on, I want to ask you
Wait,
something,
wait. Before we
and
get there,
I'm
by the way, right? Before because I know what you're gonna ask me. I know
let's
what you're
not
gonna
get
ask
there.
me. All right.
Okay.
I think that there's. Um, are we doing this like every day? Are we doing this like how?
Oh, that is
Because
a
because I got to know.
phenomenal
I got to
question.
know my schedule.
so we plan on recording weekly. So every Sunday we plan on recording, and we hope to release the episode by Monday night, latest Tuesday night.
We got to figure that out still.
We will also, well, we got to figure
Editing,
out
all
what,
that.
we don't know what the hell
Absolutely
we're
no
doing
clue.
here. Okay, so there is zero clue. We're kind of winging this on the go.
If you, by the way, if you have suggestions, throw it in the comments. Throw it in the comments.
Yeah, we need as much we need as much
We
help as
need
we can get.
lots of help.
Say it like that. And then let's see. We'll also be doing some emergency reactions. So if some crazy big news happens, or after a really big game, or stuff like that, we
Or
will
like
be
when Soto
recording.
signs with the Mets.
Yeah, when Soto signs with the Mets, and if Soto doesn't sign with the Mets, you will never hear from us ever
Well,
again.
I don't know about that because I still think
Probably,
that
yeah, probably not.
if Soto signs with the Mets, um, that'll be awesome. If Soto doesn't sign with the Mets, Uncle Steve will spread his money around, and we'll be all
Yeah,
right.
I mean, if right. I mean, I made a tweet or an X post or whatever they call it these days, saying that if the Mets don't sign Juan Soto, it'll be a complete and utter failure of an offseason. Um, and to be honest, as much as we'll be upset about it, we all know that Uncle Steve, will destroy the market. If he doesn't get Soto, then we will get everybody. So I'm really like, I want Soto, you want Soto, we all want Soto, but if we don't get Soto, we get
We'll be
everybody
all right.
else. So we'll be a okay. Now let's get back. Let's get to the big
Okay.
question here. Name me your top 5 all-time
Oof.
Mets.
So I want to say this by the way. I have my top 5 all time Mets, and I have a hot take on one of them. Right. So for suspense purposes, let me ask you, who are your top? Because first of all, I don't think that our top 5 will be all that different. I think that the ranking may the
The
placement
placement.
may be different. So let me hear from you. What do you who do you think the top 5 Mets of all time are?
So I think the
It's a word. He's trying to figure out a word.
you know what, we're gonna skip. I think everybody can agree
The
on
consensus
consensus.
overall
Consensus.
number one.
There you go. That's the word I was looking for. I think that's Tom Seaver. I don't think anybody can say otherwise. I think Tom Seaver is the greatest Met
So number
ever
one,
of
Tom
all time.
Seaver.
One, we got Tom Seaver. Number 2, I'm going with Doc Gooden. I think I don't know. He's lights out, and also I'm very biased towards pitchers, as I am a pitcher. Not anymore, but I pitched. So we got Doc. We got Tom Seaver at 1, Doc at 2. Number 3, I'm gonna go Mike Piazza.
Okay.
I think he is one of the most iconic Mets, and he's my number
Okay.
3. Now, by the way, I do want to mention my number 5 is also. I mean, it's not more of a hot take; it's a little more biased, but
We'll get there. He's skipping
he's
4.
there.
He's skipping
Let's
4.
see. All right. Well, I'm just saying. My my number 4 is Jacob Degrom.
Yeah.
My num my number 4 is Jacob Degrom. He, I mean, if he didn't get hurt and if he didn't make a rash decision and sign with the Rangers, he would be. I mean, in my opinion, he'd be the greatest pitcher of all time. Now, because he's not with the Mets anymore, and he really only had that his rookie contract, rookie kind of situation going on with the Mets, and even seeing what he did there, 2 back-to-back Cy Youngs. I think in 2019, correct me if I'm wrong, but his stat line was like 9-11 with like a 1.9 something ERA,
0.9.
which is no. This is later in the season. Let's see. Let me find Jacob deGrom's 2019 stats is gonna blow your mind. So he cleaned up his record a little bit, but he went 10-9 with a 1.70 ERA. Followed that up in 2019 with an 11-8, 2.43 ERA.
He was the most dominant pitcher in the stretch that he was stretching. He was the most dominant pitcher in baseball.
I mean,
By
you
far. By
could not
far.
touch him. Yeah, I mean, he wouldn't. He didn't walk people. I mean, he was putting down 12 guys a game in like 6 innings. Where show me that in another
Not
pitcher?
good.
Yeah, and there you go. That's why he's 2.
Okay.
And then my number 5, my number 5 is a little 5A and 5B.
Okay.
So at 5A, I'm gonna go Darryl Strawberry, right? Mets all-time leading home run hitter. There you go. And 5B is Francisco Lindor. Granted, he hasn't played with the Mets very
You can't
long.
say that's a hot take. You can't say that he's a top 5 Met player today. Maybe when he's all done, he'll be top 5. You can't say it today.
That's my hot take today. What he's done for this organization this year, last year, back-to-back Silver Slugger awards. He's pretty much he carried the team on his back to get all the way to the NLCS. I think what he's done for this team in the short-lived, not short-lived because it's still living, but in the short time he's been with the Mets, I think he's just had such passion, and that's why he's my 5B.
Okay. So here we go. So
Flip
I'm
question over to
surprised
you.
because they're actually. I thought that our top 5 would actually be more similar. Just the order would be different. My number 1 guy, you didn't even mention. You did not even mention the captain, David Wright.
I'll tell you why I didn't mention him, by the way, because there's, first of all, for everybody saying whatever, blah blah blah. Let me show you something really quick.
Nobody said anything.
People are saying things. I know for this fact. Let me just show you this really quickly. This right here is David Wright's signed game used batting glove. I love David Wright more than anybody does.
Not enough to put him in your top 5.
Well, you know what? First of all, I think he's going to be a Hall of Famer. I think he should be a Hall of Famer, unlike you. And you're going to put him at your number 1. So let's talk about that. You can't put somebody at your number 1 who you don't think is going to be a Hall of Famer.
That's because his numbers aren't there for the Hall of Fame. Right. Okay. So a little preview for our next episode. We're going to talk about Hall of Fame ballot. And Azriel knows that I don't think David Wright is a Hall of Famer. We'll get into that next episode. But David Wright just doesn't have the stats for it. But in terms of all-time Mets, he leads every statistical category except for home runs, which he's number 2, and triples, which he wasn't a triple hitter. You had Jose Reyes and Mookie Wilson, and you had a bunch of other speedy guys that were there. Bud Harrelson. He's number 9. He's number 9 for triples, but RBIs, hits, stubbles, runs, games, at bats. He is the he's the franchise. I know everyone calls Tom Seaver the franchise. I think David Wright took him over, and he never played for another team other than the Mets. Number 2. So number 1, David Wright. Number 2, the franchise, Tom Seaver. He's just Tom Seaver. Enough said.
Right? Too good. Yeah. Enough said.
Number 3, Mike Piazza. So I think we got him the same.
Yeah, we got him.
Number 3, Mike Piazza. He allowed the Mets to become the team that gave Met fans hope. That sound right? I don't know if it sounded right, but let's go with it. Right? When they got him from the Marlins after he was traded to the Marlins from the Dodgers, and they gave up Preston Wilson for him, and who was a hot prospect, he just changed the trajectory of the franchise, leading into the 2000s and early 2000s, and where they had their 2000 their playoff run over there. Number 3, Mike Piazza, best hitting catcher of all time, Hall of Famer. So we have David Wright, Tom Seaver, Hall of Fame, Mike Piazza, Hall of Fame. Number 4, Doc Gooden. Right? There was no one else like him during his time with the Mets. Right? Yeah, he ended up falling off a little bit. Had different comebacks. I was actually at his no-hitter when he pitched for the other New York team. I was sitting in the bleachers that night, and I wore my Met hat to the game in the bleachers, and they all started chanting, "Burn that hat, burn that hat." And for my own safety and security, I had to take my hat off because you don't want to sit in the bleachers of Old Yankee Stadium wearing a Mets hat. I did because that's how I roll. But I was there by his no-hitter. One of my best baseball moments, actually. It's weird because it was in the other New York stadium. Number 5. And number 5, Darryl Strawberry. He had one of the nicest swings that I've seen. Obviously, there are nicer swings. Ken Griffey, swing was just the most beautiful swing I've ever seen. Darryl Strawberry was just majestic in how he swung, clutch. He's number 5, all-time Mets hitter. I'll say this: if Pete resigns, he will be on that list, and Darryl Strawberry will fall off the top
5. I mean, I don't think there are 2 guys. I mean, right? Francisco Lindor is going to be on that list, right? He's my 5B right now. He's there. He's kind of whatever.
Which, by the way, it's like I said before, crazy. That's crazy talk. I love Francisco Lindor.
I told you I had Francisco
a hot take. Lindor. That's crazy talk.
You said you had a hot take. I did not hear one hot take.
Number 1, David Wright. Everyone says it's Tom Seaver. You opened up saying this is the consensus number 1 overall is Tom Seaver.
Because he is. I guess you know what? You're right.
It's not. I think it's David Wright. Until David Wright, it was Tom Seaver. David Wright, I think, is the guy.
Here's where you're wrong, though. Because you say that David Wright won't be a Hall of Famer, therefore you cannot put him at your number 1 pick, at your number 1 all-time Met. That's just I don't get how you get. I don't see where you get that from. If you don't think he's going to be a Hall of Famer,
he was the best Met to ever put on that uniform. His numbers, because of his injuries, aren't there to support a Hall of Fame candidacy. Would I vote for him to be in the Hall of Fame? Probably, right?
So why did you even have to think
because
about
I'm
that? That shouldn't be a probably. That should be a yeah.
I'm real. I'm not gonna gush over someone just because he's Met when it comes to the Hall of Fame. But he is the best Met to ever put on a uniform. Then Tom Seaver, then Mike Piazza, then Doc Gooden, then Darryl Strawberry. And if Pete Alonso signs, he will be number one or two or three. He will be better than Mike Piazza. The question is, will he overtake David Wright and Tom Seaver? Most likely.
That you know what? I don't disagree with you. I mean, I don't disagree with you, but there's a lot of people I know that don't even want the Mets to re-sign Pete Alonso,
Well,
which I think is crazy. Which I think is crazy. But I know that a lot of people will disagree with you on Pete Alonso being better than Mike Piazza. I'm not saying that I necessarily disagree. I think if he re-signs him, I think he had a really bad year this year because whatever contract looming over his head or whatever it was. But if you also look at his stats, he had a bad Pete Alonso year.
exactly. He had a bad
He
year.
did not have a bad year. He had a bad Pete Alonso
Right.
year. That should be everybody has to know that. He did not have a bad year, to bad Pete Alonso year. Regardless, that's our top fives. So we want to give you a little sneak peek into Sunday's episode, which will probably hopefully be released on Monday if we can figure out how to record. And I hope this can come out tomorrow if we can figure out not how to record because we're recording now. Figure out how to edit. I hope that we can do that. But we want to give you a little sneak peek into Sunday's episode. We are going to be reviewing the 2024 season. We will be talking about the free agent list, our wish list, our projections, or predictions, same word, different spelling.
Not quite.
Whatever. We'll talk about it, and then again, we're gonna talk about who we think deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, and we're gonna have a fun time. Is there anything else you want to say?
Listen, I think this is an exciting thing. It's fun to do this with you, and I'm looking forward. This should be fun. And again, if anyone has any ideas, thoughts, follow, comment, like, share it with your friends, share it with people that need to be educated on Mets baseball. Um, and yeah, hopefully we're in this to just have a good time, and for you guys to maybe get a sneak peek into the bickering that goes on in our house, and also just a nice father son bonding experience.
And listen, and you know
We're gonna get
what? Like
emotional.
you
We're gonna
said,
get
we're here.
emotional here. This is get emotional.
You will. I won't. I'll laugh at you too. Anyways, like we said, we're here to have fun. We're here to talk with you guys. We really want to hear from you. We value what you guys have to say. Comments are always going to be open. The DMs are always going to be open. If you have ideas, shoot it. Give us a follow, share it, show your dad, show your son, show your grandfather, show your uncle. Unless he's a other New York fan, then don't talk to him ever again. And that's that. I mean, that's the pilot of the original Mets podcast.